How many of you familiar with pair programming here? Okay, cool, quite a lot. So this talk is quite short. I just want to leave more time for Piotr, but it's mostly focused on the remote aspects of pair programming, less about pair programming as on its own. And if you'd like to hear more, please let me know, and I'll do maybe a separate talk about that, or see how we can work on something. So let's just move on. So today we'll touch on these topics right there. And practice of pair programming. We'll go into the details of pair programming remotely. We'll discuss the pros and cons of screen share as opposed to command line, and the command line tools we use to pair with our colleagues across the offices at GIG. And hopefully we'll have some time for a demo. Okay, so what is remote pair programming? So some of you are familiar with the practice of pair programming. It's basically, I'm going to explain it in a couple of slides, why we should consider pair programming. I will explain what challenges we face and how we overcome them. So it's basically, it's working together on a problem. Sort of like you would do when you study for a subject, for example, you pair together and you learn the notebooks and whatever. So the main reason why we do pair programming is that you have the ability to share knowledge more easily, and you can improve performance and produce higher quality code. There's a couple of other items here, but basically it's very intense. It requires a little bit of kind of communication skills, and then when you work together with someone, it's very tiring, so you take breaks. So it's a bit hard maybe at the beginning, especially in person, but it has higher benefits as well because you have to kind of double the focus and you catch bugs and stuff like that. I hope that explains it. Please feel free to ask questions during the presentation anytime. It's that kind of format, it's open. So yeah, the reason why we do pair programming remotely is even more so because you have the advantages of the side-by-side programming, pair programming, and also you overcome some of the difficulties with working on a distributed team. Sometimes people get siloed, they get work on a specific problem alone, and they kind of get not forgotten, but don't interact as much with the team. So there's stuff that people miss out when they're remotely. So some of the difficulties we face, these include time constraints, communication, and technology. And there's variants of both of them for the remote and the in-person ways of pairing. Oops, sorry. So any questions about this part, challenges? Should I go more into something? I kind of mentioned it's mentally tiring a little bit. It takes a bit more time. Yeah, some people are like just not personality to pair, so it might be hard to find the the common ground. But yeah, but mostly, remote pairings also are a bit harder sometimes because you don't have the tools, the right tools. So preparation is kind of key. And yeah, that's about it on that. So how do we get better at pair programming, or what are the best practices? So the etiquette is the first thing. Basically be kind to your pairing partner, listen to each other, and always allow for questions. Basically ask and don't be shy, so that nothing is left kind of until the last moment. And the second item is basically support and tooling. So at GIG, for example, we're quite lucky to have good support from the management and the kind of IT teams that help us organize these things. So like Jonathan here organized this meetup technologically. So as long as you have that backing, it's super easy to start off in your company. But if you don't yet, maybe you'll be able to kind of introduce them to the ideas, and hopefully they can start it off. I think it's fun. I really like enjoy like working with a partner, and I learn way more than working by myself. Yeah. So now that I've convinced you that pairing is awesome, hopefully, let's compare the two remote pairing methods. because I kind of mentioned that we're going to focus a bit more on remote. So we have screen sharing versus command line. So screen sharing basically is applications like TeamViewer, VLC. What else we have? The ones that come built in the Windows, like remote desktop. Yeah, remote desktop protocol. The Windows, the Mac have their own as well. Yeah, like Zoom is able to use like as a remote pairing tool. But basically, it's a GUI application that just shares all the pixels on your screen. So it's quite heavy a little bit. So even though they use compression these days, but it might be not so usable on the unstable network. So you need a good connection. But yeah, I mean, I don't have anything inherently against it. I tend to use it when I'm a bit too lazy to initialize command line connections, or where there's a hard to catch bug that is only reproducible on someone else's machine and you want to see it in action, sort of. GUI applications, if you have some simulator of a mobile device or something, you cannot really do it otherwise. Especially if it's remote, like in a different location than you. Otherwise, you can just come to them and see it. Make sense? So as opposed to that, the command line pairing is a bit more usable under imperfect network conditions. So you can basically, it's sending characters, so it's kind of light on the network. It's there's common tooling across different operating systems, and yeah, you could do cool stuff like you can connect to a remote server, like you have a server running in production or in some kind of staging environment. You have a bug on it, so you can connect together with another partner and debug together, even remotely, while you're connected to the same machine, with the help of some tools I will explain later. So yeah, I mean, also for me, I think it helps to focus on the task as opposed to this one, which kind of shares the whole screen. So you get the notifications, the background, desktop, how do you say, wallpaper and all this kind of sometimes distracting things. This one is a bit more, you focused only on the shell, so you cannot really see so much other things, and it's less distracting. It like also there's there are disadvantages. You need to know a little bit of shell commands. You need to know how to run stuff from the command line to do that. And you need to know if you're doing coding on that, like if you're examining code, you need to know some sort of command line editor, like Vim or Emacs or Nano or any of those command line editors that you could just open a file and edit. I mean, knowing the shortcuts there is kind of easier to navigate, and especially with larger code base. And so yeah, this is my preferred method of pairing. So I will explain my process, how we do it at Gig with some of the fellow developers in other offices. So we basically start with these tools. I use some sort of tunneling tool. So in this case, I use NGROG and SSH to initialize the connection securely and bypass any firewalls and stuff like that. And then I use some screen multiplexer, either TMAX or screen, which basically allows us to do more than one thing at a time easily. And then we use the editors, and we run some shell commands, and it works. So I'll just detail some of these tools. So NGROG. Is anyone familiar with NGROG here? Okay. So it's basically service. Used to be open source in version 1. It's kind of written in Go, I think, but the version 2 is closed source. Basically, you can download it, and it's super simple to set up. Not sure if I can show you zooming in here. It's a bit small, but basically, I'll show the process is like 4 lines. The first user that wants to connect to the second user creates an SSH key, or uses an existing SSH key pair, so that the connection is basically over SSH, which is a protocol for encrypted connections, if you're familiar with that. Sends the second user his public or his or her public key. That user adds that public key to the authorized keys, which means he's authorizing the connection. Obviously, he needs to launch, the second user needs to launch a server, like an SSHD server, so it listens to connections. And then he also launches, he or she launches NGROG. which basically gets this kind of interface presented on the screen. And it says here, for example, forwarding port 22 to some address at ngrog.io. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe it's a bit small, but then yeah, here I copied it. And then the first user will basically enter that address and SSH to that address, thereby tunneling to the second user, right? And so in this case, I use port 22, which is the default port for SSH protocol, and region EU, which kind of helps in the case of pairing, because if you are in Europe and you do it without this, I think it defaults to USA servers, and then there's a bit of latency. This kind of helps reduce the latency, so the pairing is a bit more smoother. There's less delay, basically, when you enter commands, the other side sees them, and so on. Okay, so that's about NGROG. Any questions? A little bit? No? Okay. Then the next tool I wanted to talk about is TMAX. It's my favorite multiplexer, terminal multiplexer, which basically is like alt-tab for your shell. You can make, arrange windows in multiple ways and create different sessions. And then the idea is that you'll be able to edit a file in one pane and do other actions in another pane, like run the script or debug or whatever it requires, and you don't need to exit this one to continuously do that, like I mentioned. Super easy to get started with. Again, on all operating systems, you just have some sort of installation mechanism. Either you download it from their site, or you just do like in Mac brew install, or on Linux systems apt-get, or Pacman, or whatever is your favorite distribution, you can use that. And then yeah, basically first user would do, so at this stage those two users have connected. Okay, so user one would, for example, create a new TMAX session, and user two would connect to it using TMAX attach. And that's it. They're both sharing the same multiplexer session. They can see each other's screen and so on. And another advantage that TMAX has, in my opinion, over screen is that it's really popular. So it has a lot of different applications oriented around it and for it. I just gave a few examples here. I will show later if we have time. They're pretty cool stuff. You can arrange the configuration of your screens in different configuration files, or you can like really open a lot of commands on different machines at the same time and kind of see them all. It's pretty cool, explains. And it's open source, which we like. So yeah, this is my tool of choice. I think there's a slide missing. Let's see if I can skip to it. Yeah, Vim or Emacs, some sort of editor. So Vim, I like using Vim, but kind of both are quite popular, wide community. There's tons of info online, and again, available for all OSs. So it's easy to get started with. Might not be used a lot unless you do a bit of shell programming, basically. Use the shell, but yeah, it's super convenient. Tons of features. I don't know, plugins and customizations. You can make it, your IDE. You can make it your Python environment instead of PyCharm. So in that sense, it's quite useful when you do this sort of remote programming over command line. Right. So for my next trick, I need a volunteer from the audience. Do I have a volunteer that has maybe SSH open? Yeah, do you have? Okay, Daniel is volunteering already. Great. I know he has access because we tried this a few days ago. I revealed my trick. So I'm gonna try and reshare my screen so you guys can see y'all can see this. Let's see. Okay, so I reshared my desktop. Just gonna open terminal. Again, I don't think I need to show screen sharing. Screen sharing is super easy. You just open Team Viewer, and then yeah. If no one ever done this, this is as easy as it gets. You just connect to your partner, and that's it. You can see each other's screen. You can control the mouse. Not too much to talk about there. So let's do this. So first thing I'm gonna do, if I just go back to the presentation, because I can't remember. Right, so I need to create my SSH key. So I will do SSH key gen. So I already created one, so I'm just gonna print out the key. This is my public key of my SSH client. Then I'm gonna share it with Mr. Daniel. Let's see. Cool. And now he's able to add that to his authorized keys. Have you done that? I think you've done it yesterday. It might work out of the box, so to speak. Okay, so next thing we do is you're gonna open NGROG, right? Let's see the presentation again. Yes, so I sent you the key. You're gonna copy it to your authorized keys, and you're gonna run NGROG to open up a tunnel. Now, the reason we can just connect to him normally is because you run through routers and firewalls, how you call it, and firewalls and such, and basically his machine will not normally let me to connect to him directly. So a tunnel is recommended. There's other ways to do tunnels outside of NGROG, perhaps more secure ways. So if you're interested, let me know, I'll explain. The easiest way is just to use some remote server and do SSH tunnel, and then both of you can share that tunnel. So, but anyway, we're using NGROG for simplicity. So he's shared me this connection string with me. Yep, here it is. If you all can see that, that's basically the part from this screenshot. He sent me this. I'm just gonna open up SSH. What's his name? Daniel.Mikalev. Okay, so basically from this connection string, I only need the port because I already have the filled in 0 TCP EU NGROG IO. Yeah, just fill in the port. I need to accept the connection, key print, and that's it. I'm connected to Daniel's machine. Now we're not sharing the same screen. He cannot see what I'm typing here. Can you see this? No, he cannot see this. So what we need to do is we need to run some sort of multiplexer and connect to the same command line tool. So do you have screen or TMAX something running? Okay. Just TMAX will create a new session by its own. Just TMAX enter. Yeah. Let me see, just so I'm not mistaken. Yeah, you can either do TMAX new, or I think the default command is new. So if I do TMAX add, it's basically attach session. It's just short that. We are connected to his session. Hello, Daniel. How can you see that? Oh, yeah, here he is. Magic. No, pretty cool. So then, yeah, we can pair on this here. So we can, for example, split our screen. Maybe we can show something else cool. So, for example, I can detach from this session. I'm back to here. He's still attached to that session on his computer. And I can connect with something called tunnel, like tunnel port sharing. Let's do this. So I'm sharing, or rather the connection, the SSH connection will share his port 8000 with my 8001 port. So if I just reconnect back to attach, Daniel, can you run like some web application here, like decompile something? Or just an example web server and something. Mm-hmm. Right. So he's gonna launch a web application. Okay, has a bunch of dependencies, is running. And I'm gonna open up my browser. Now I don't have anything running on localhost 8000. But yeah, this one is, I can close that. But he has the one running on 1000, which is paired, like tunneled to my 1001. So I just do that. And we can see the request is starting to get served on his machine, and I'm getting the client's kind of response. So that's pretty fun. So now we can work together on a file, right? So I can go back here, open with my editor. Let me just try to guess where he puts his files. What? I will find it. Accidents. Comply. So for example, we want to work on something. Then we can, let's try something fun. What can we work on? Anyway, we'll work on some files, change them, and then you will see the changes on the website. That's about it. That's the demo, I think. Was that fun? What else can we do? We can remote connect to some shared servers. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. So sharing with if you just use screen sharing, like the first method, like for example, TeamViewer, that's easy. He will open his PyCharm. If he has PyCharm installed, then I will see I can take over his mouse and so on. But if we want to use PyCharm kind of separately and connect them somehow, there are plugins to do that. One such plugin I just saw today, I think I tried it a few months ago, but I can't remember, is this guy's, Flubits. So basically they create a bunch of plugins for different editors. So there's Atom, let's see, what else do I have? Not this. Yeah, I mean, that's basically their business model. They created like a platform with plugins for different editors. IntelliJ IDEA basically is the editor that runs PyCharm. So it runs PHP Storm and all of those kind of editors that are on the same platform. So that plugin covers them all. And then Emacs, Vim, so these are the editors I mentioned, Atom, Sublime Text, so whatever you use, they have something like, I'm not affiliated with them, I'm not trying to sell it, but just saying like, this is basically what they do. They create a tunnel for you using their servers, you pay a certain amount, I think they're free for public repositories, but if you pay on private, they need to pay something. And then the plugin that they created connects to those remote connections. They might even have a demo here. Yeah, they even have features like video recording on their website and stuff like that. So they can provide you kind of the sharing solution, the pairing solution for the whole thing end to end. You can even publish, this Explore thing is you publish your sessions and you can invite other people to join it, public sessions. So if you're doing a hackathon or something, that's kind of fun to do as well. But yeah, I mean, check it out. I don't know if there's other ways. VS Code has a cool thing. I don't know if you guys heard of VS Code, Visual Studio Code Editor. Live sharing, that's what I wanted to mention. Yeah, so they have something called live sharing from 2017 already. But yeah, so that's pretty cool as well. Two users connect and they even show like what the user is named and where is their cursor selection and stuff. So that's doable for VS Code out of the box now. Google Docs is sort of the same idea. Only there is two accounts connected to Google servers, and they just show you where each one. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there might be other plugins for PyCharm. I haven't investigated really deeply because I'm not a PyCharm user myself. I really prefer the command line for the reasons I mentioned, like it's nice and calm. But yeah, where else should we go? Oh, let's go back to the presentation. Any other questions, some suggestions? Okay, let's go back here where we were. Okay, let me just, I'm gonna open my notes somehow. Yeah. Or you can download it. Yeah. I mean, I had to tell him yesterday, I was pairing him for the first time. I had to tell him, can you go to NGROG and click download? And he had to do that basically. Yes, some of the features require sign up. I think the region stuff requires sign up, or maybe TCP port 22. I'm not sure which ones. But yeah, I mean, you have to assume certain things for this to work. But it's less about assuming, it's more about talking. It's, again, the main part of pairing is be able to communicate with your partner. So another thing that really helps when you do remote pairing on the shell is if you do a voice call meanwhile, because then you can, because it's harder to see visual cues. When you sit next to someone, you see that, oh, let me take the mouse for a second. Here it's harder. Sometimes you end up typing at the same time. It's kind of funny looking. So you have to, it's easier if you just open up a voice call and just talk through it, because it's all about talking and communicating and asking each other, what does this code do? Where is that? How does that work? And so on until you get to the task you wanted to complete. So it's possible to do anything, you know, as long as you agree upon it before. And it helps if you come prepared so you don't waste time debugging. And but yeah. Yeah, extreme programming, they call it. You can have like 10 people connected and brainstorming at the same time. Mac and Windows together. Is it possible to connect a Mac and a Windows together? 100%, yes. Because, well, in all types of sharing, there are tools that are platform independent, right? So NGROG, downloadable for every platform, Mac, Windows, Linux, whatever. TMAX the same, Vim the same. So that's not Vim. So whatever you're using, it's possible to connect them. And with screen sharing, it's even easier normally. Yes, I have some points about that. So now that we've completed the demo, let's see what is the next thing. Thank you very much for the demo, being patient with me, and I think it went well. I was expecting applause. No, don't applaud. Come on, it's fine. So yeah, I made a list of the tools, general tools that I've used, and some articles about them, and about Windows. So TMAX and Git Bash for Windows. Someone made an article which is hard to follow and barely works. I think I spent like 2 hours on my wife's Windows machine until I figured it out. It works. You can connect from Mac to a TMAX to a SSH, like running NGROG or whatever. The whole setup with 2 different machines, one running something like MSys2, Git for Bash, Bash for Git, Git Bash for Windows. The whole thing. Like there's a package you download and yes, which uses like MSys2 or they don't use they don't use Cygwin anymore. But basically, you need to install it, hack it a little bit, and then it's doable. However, it's very slow and renders poorly, so I would suggest against it if you can avoid it. You can use something called WSL, the Windows subsystem for Linux or something like that, which is basically Linux running in Windows. Again, it's a bit hacky. It's still not there yet. So if you're using Docker, for example, you need to connect it to your Docker on host window on your Windows machine, and it's doable. Just needs a little bit of work. And if you'd like to get help with it, just reach out to me or something, and we can talk about it. I can help you out with your Windows machine, or convince you to change. Whatever comes first. But yeah, it's everything is possible. Exactly. Yes. If your machine is not too weak, like it's not the old Surface Pro or whatever, then you can probably do that as well. So a couple of other general resources you can see here. Please let me know if you discover any other ones. I'll obviously share the slides with you so you can try it out. There's a couple of talks, YouTube talks. The second one is quite funny. It sounds like a commercial. And but yeah, I mean, I stole most of my stuff from there, but I just didn't go too much into details. If you want more details about pair programming in general, those are really good. The last resource is kind of neat. Maybe I can open it. Yeah, I can show it off just for a second. It's a little bit geared to Mac users. It does the same thing I explained, but it also talks about the security of it. So if you're pairing with someone maybe you don't really know good, it talks about creating a new user account for them and kind of, they call it castrating or limiting it so it doesn't allow access to other things you don't want them to have access. Because essentially you're allowing them to connect as yourself. That might be a bit risky. You might expose some things you want to expose. So yeah, so that's useful article. The last one, a couple of general ones. Mosh is very good. Yeah, it's like a SSH alternative tunneling for tunneling. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. I've written it down. I'll add it as well. Well, maybe I'll mention it next time. And so to conclude, it's easy to start with. So whether you use screen sharing or multiplexing, like the terminal multiplex and SSH, you can do it. There's tons of info online about pair programming. It's a practice that has been quite common today. So yeah, and if you don't find what you need, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help out and learn from you how is your process. So especially if you're remote, it's really, really, really important. You should definitely try it out. If you work with people at other offices and you don't do it yet, I guarantee it will make collaborating way easier. And again, I'm not advocating specifically for command line, so I'm not saying drop your favorite IDEs or convert, to shell programming only. But do explore the available tools, see what you work with, what your colleagues work with, and find what works for you and your partners. Thank you very much. We're open for questions again. So the question is, what's the best use case? Is it something you start from scratch or a debug issue? So it depends. I didn't go too much into the pair programming stuff just to save time, but there are a couple of different methods how you can start the session. There is planned pair programming where you actually, let's say you work in an agile environment and you have sprints or something like that. You can actually plan it. You can say, okay, we need 2 more story points to do pairing, and me and this other developer, we're going to sit on this problem from this point and this point, and we're going to reach this conclusion. So you kind of plan for it. And that works really well for design problems, or maybe when there's a difference in level and the problem is a bit more complex and help is required. So design, as in design, I mean like architecture. So you want to build something from zero. You have an idea, but you need to kind of flesh it out into a skeleton. It really works well if you do it with someone. You can debug the small kind of question marks quite easily. So, and the other type is sort of more like a symptom solution, right? Like you mentioned, solving bugs. That's more in the realm of like impromptu or spontaneous pairing, which basically means, hey, I have a problem. Can you help me out now? Or like in 10 minutes? Yeah, sure. And then you connect and you sit on that. And normally it's limited in time, but you can probably solve it depending on the people involved. Like we wanted to do on your problem before. So that's that one. The impromptu is more for small problems, like relatively, because then you don't really want to go into a design problem where there's a lot of involved, a lot of code, a lot of planning with just out of the blue. It's better to plan for it. But yeah, I use both. They're both usable and they're both recommended. So yeah, the best experience for me is just unblocking people. Just be able to unblock each other when someone is stuck and you need some fresh ideas, just pair with someone. That's it. That's the best use case. Yes, knowledge. Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly. Yes. So a little bit, like I said, like there might be skill level differences, but there also might be just knowledge differences because someone might be quite a skilled developer, like maybe the same level as yourself, but then he doesn't know anything about this code base because he'd never seen it before. Maybe the documentation is a bit weak. So walking through it with another developer that is familiar with it is really helpful when you're getting started. So yeah, that's a good use case for pairing. Cool. Any other questions or suggestions, recommendations, discussions? No. Okay, great. So sorry, I forgot to update the notes here. That was a internal meeting notes. So please do reach out to me on, what is it called? What is this? On Meetup, if you have any other questions or just afterwards. And yeah, we can talk about it. Thanks a lot, everyone.